Welcome back, Capital F football fans, to the O&O Sports YouTube channel. Today, we experience a landmark in O&O sports history and really world history in general, if I'm being honest. We are deciding today who the blue bloods of college football really are, who will rank atop this list, who will fall slightly below, and who will just be not in the conversation at all. We are going to find out today. But first, as always, be sure to like and subscribe if you are a fan of the content. It helps me out a ton. And go ahead and leave a comment as well, maybe even before you watch this video, letting me know who you think the blue bloods of college football are, and then compare how our lists stack up. I think it might be a little bit different. There are a few things that I researched in this video that I think a few people might be overlooking. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Here is the tier list. As you can see at the top, we have the blue bloods, followed by the new bloods, teams who have been very, very good recently but don't have the kind of historic success of a blue blood. Then powerhouses who don't have maybe the championship prowess, maybe the brand of some of the other teams, or just haven't quite gotten to new blood status because they haven't been as good recently. And then after that, we just have nope, which is the category where I think you have a case for the conversation, but just really don't fall into any of these categories. Now, the parameters I'm using for this video are going to be championships, mostly poll era and beyond, meaning 1936 and beyond, historical relevance / longevity, kind of grouping those things together. If you have been very good for a very long time, have some elite stretches, that's going to help you out a lot in terms of blue blood status. And then historical dominance. How many wins do you have? What's your winning percentage look like? Have you had a ton of elite stretches and obviously those championship stretches in your program's history? Those are the main things I'm basing this off of, and we're going over 25 different teams. Let's go ahead and see how they stack up, starting with none other than Alabama. This is the benchmark team for all of these teams, in my opinion. They have longevity knocked down. They have the Nick Saban eras of recent, Bear Bryant eras, and then they have guys like Gene Stallings who had great runs there as well. They are third all-time in wins with 985, 733 winning percentage in their program history, and most importantly, poll era and beyond, they have 13 national championships. This one is very, very easy in my opinion. Alabama is our first blue blood of the video. And next we have Army. Now, not what most people expect because they think recently Army's a service academy. They're known for running the ball, running the triple option, not really known for their championship prowess, but they have had some dominant runs in their program's history, most specifically in the 1940s, where they won their 2 championships back-to-back actually in 1944 and 1945. However, when we get into longevity, it's not really there. They have had some very mediocre stretches throughout their program's history. They are a service academy. They're not going to fit in with the recruiting powerhouses of 1980 and beyond. And in terms of dominance, they are just 37th all time in wins with 746. They have a 571 winning percentage. This, unfortunately, is going to have to be a nope. I just don't think they fit really into any of these categories. And next, we have Alabama's Iron Bowl opponent in Auburn. Now, a bonus for them, they do have a national championship this century. Overall, they have 2, one in 1957, and of course, one with that Cam Newton team in 2010. They have had some good stretches in their program's history, talking about Pat Dye in the 80s, Terry Bowden in the 90s, Malzahn even had some solid years in the 2000s, 2010s. So overall, their longevity as a program has been decent, but in terms of dominance, they take a slight step back, just 20th all time in total wins with 809 in their history, 621 all-time winning percentage. And unfortunately, I just don't think Auburn has the era-defining historical success of a lot of these blue blood teams that I'm going to be ranking, and even some of these new blood teams in terms of recency. And unfortunately for Auburn, I don't think they have the era-defining success of like the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s to justify putting them in blue blood, and they haven't been elite really in this century. They obviously have had a couple good stretches, but for Auburn, I am going to have to put them in a powerhouse. And next, we have none other than the Clemson Tigers, one of the most interesting teams on this list, in my opinion. 3 national championships in their history, 1 in 1981 and then 2 in 2016 and 2018. For Clemson, their biggest problem really on this list, keeping them from being a blue blood, in my opinion, is longevity. They did have some success in the 80s and 90s under Danny Ford and Tommy Bowden, but nothing really of note before that. And in terms of historical dominance, once again, not a ton pre-1980, but since 2000 and really 2010, they've been one of the best programs in the country. Obviously, 2 national championships with Dabo Swinney. They've shot up into the top 20 in all-time wins with 815, 624 winning percentage. I am giving Clemson new blood status. And next, we are going over the Florida Gators, another fringy SEC team like Auburn that we just talked about. All-time, they have 3 national championships, one in 1996 under Steve Spurrier, and 2 in the 2000s, one in 2006, one in 2008, both with Urban Meyer. And like Clemson, they are one of the best teams overall, really, since 1990. They have 2 elite stretches that we just talked about in that time frame, but nothing much of note before or after that. They had some solid years under Dan Mullen, but haven't reached that elite status recently. And on top of that, they are 29th all-time in total wins with 770, 668 winning percentage all-time. And if they didn't have that national championship prowess recently, I would say they're probably a powerhouse with Auburn, who just has that one in 2010. But since they have 3 national championships in the past 30 years, I'm going to go ahead and say Florida is a new blood program. And next, we have notable Florida rival, Florida State. Interestingly enough, they are one of the newest teams on this list. Their history starts in 1954, where most start in the early 1900s, some even in the 1800s. And in their short history, they have 3 national championships, 2 in the 90s, 1993, 1999 under Bobby Bowden, and 1, of course, in 2013. With Jimbo Fisher. And in terms of longevity, they skyrocket under Bowden in the 80s and 90s, and to their benefit, them being a newer school, they don't have a ton of history before that, so honestly get a notch there for immediately being one of the better teams just a couple decades after they were founded. And once again, for the past 30 years, really, they've been one of the best programs in the country. Not so much recently. They do win the ACC a couple years ago, but not really factoring that in as much. I am much more factoring in those 3 national titles in the span of 20 years for the Florida State Seminoles. And like Florida, I'm going to have to go new blood for that reason specifically. Very, very good recently, but don't have that historical dominance, that historical prowess to boost them into blue blood status. And the next team is the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, Georgia needs no introduction. Everybody knows they've been very, very good. Probably the best program overall in recent memory other than Alabama. Definitely one of the best teams overall since 2010, but that is not all that matters here. Let's figure out exactly how good they were prior to these recent runs at national championships. Obviously, the 2 national championships back-to-back under Kirby Smart in 2021 and 2022, and their only other national championship under Vince Dooley in 1980. Like a lot of these teams so far, not a ton of sustained success before 1980, but obviously since 1980 have had a few elite stretches like we've talked about. That is really helping them recently, but historically, like I said, not a ton of sustained success. They are near the top 10 in all-time wins with 904. Could be in that top 10, honestly, in the next 5 or 6 seasons with how things have played out with some of the teams above them. Overall, a 669 winning percentage in their history. This might be the toughest one so far, but honestly, I'm going to have to go new blood. Most of their success is post 1980, don't have that historic prowess like I've talked about so many times to justify them being a blue blood team. And the next team is Georgia Tech. Now, on its surface, you might see Georgia Tech and think, not a chance in the world, Colton. Why are they even on this list? But like a lot of these teams that we're going to talk about, they have had elite stretches before mine or yours probably memory dates back. 2 national championships to boast for the Yellow Jackets, one under Bobby Dodd, who they named their stadium after in 1952, and another one in 1990 under Bobby Ross. And looking at that, why not just hire another dude named Bobby? Their 2 national championships are with dudes named Bobby. I like Brent Key, but it might be time to bring in another Bobby for the Yellow Jackets. But as for longevity, like I said, great stretches in the 1950s with Bobby Dodd, 1990s with Bobby Ross. Early 1900s, they were a notable John Heisman-led football team. In the late 90s, George O'Leary had some good runs with the program. They do have a few pre-poll era national championships as well, but overall not a ton of elite stretches for the Yellow Jackets. And in terms of historical dominance, they're 28th all-time in wins with 772, and their all-time winning percentage is .581. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go nope for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. They have national championships, but the elite seasons are just not a abundant enough, in my opinion, for me to justify putting them as a powerhouse or a new blood team. Definitely not recently, but historically not as much either. And next we have the LSU Tigers, another kind of fringy SEC team. I think overall they're probably a little bit better than Florida and Auburn. They have a more recent national championship than both of those teams as well, but overall they have four: one in 1958 with Paul Dietzel, one in 2003 with Nick Saban, one in 2007 with Les Miles, and of course one in 29 with Coach O, Ed Orgeron. But once again, they are a team whose elite history really begins post 1980, and for LSU, really mid 90s is when it starts. Before that, not a ton to show. A couple elite seasons, not very many elite stretches where they're a national championship caliber team before that. But in terms of historical dominance, like Clemson, they've skyrocketed into the top 20 really since their mid 90s push. 822 wins all time, a 644 winning percentage for the Tigers. One of the best teams overall in the 21st century with 3 national titles. But once again, I am going to have to go new blood for the LSU Tigers. Not enough historically to bump them up into that blue blood status. Once again, like I think I've said for the past like 8 teams in a row. And next, it is all about the University of Miami. Probably one of the most elite stretches of any team ever from the 80s to early 2000s. But that is not all that matters once again. In terms of national championships, they have 5 in that stretch that I just talked about. One in 1983 under Howard Schnellenberger, one in 1987 under Jimmy Johnson, 2 in 1989 and 1991 under Dennis Erickson, and then their national title in 2001 under Larry Coker. But then we get once again into longevity, which has just been a killer on this list, and once again it applies here. Not a ton of sustained success really before 1980 or after 2003. And really since they left the Big East, they've struggled in the ACC. Have had some good years. Obviously this year they make the national championship game, so they might be able to get something working there. But in terms of dominance, they are 61st all time, which was a huge surprise for me finding that out when making this list. 686 wins all time, 633 winning percentage all time. Miami is going to have to go under new blood once again. Not enough outside of that historic stretch from 1980 to 2003 for them to get boosted into blue blood status. And after the Hurricanes, we have the Michigan Wolverines. And let me just say, what a breath of fresh air it is to see them here. I don't even think I have to make an argument. They are easily a blue blood, but for the sake of the video, 4 national championships, they have been good seemingly forever. In terms of longevity, they've been good seemingly forever. In the early 1900s, they were a notable Fielding Yost-led team, one of many. In the mid-1900s, they have the Fritz Chrysler eras. In the late 1900s, obviously the Bo Schembechler teams. In the early 2000s, they have the Lloyd Carr era. And in the 2010s, they have the Jim Harbaugh teams. And historically, first all time in wins, the only team on this list with over 1,000 wins, 732 winning percentage all time, easily a blue blood for Michigan. Next, we move on to the Michigan State Spartans. Obviously a rival of Michigan, but that is not the most notable thing about the Spartans on this list. They have 3 national championships in their history, one in 1952 under Biggie Munn, and 2 in 1965 and 1966 under Duffy Daugherty. But for the Spartans, longevity is once again the killer. They have some solid seasons in the 2010s under Mike D'Antonio, but other than those mid-1900s and 2010s teams, nothing really of note for the Spartans. In terms of historical dominance, they are 48th all-time in wins with 725, and their winning percentage in their history is just 588. Michigan State, unfortunately, is our third nope team of the video. And next, it is the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Again, not another team that people think about in terms of brand prowess, especially recently, but historically speaking, they are pretty blue blood-ish. They have 4 national championships in their history. They were actually the first ever AP national champion in 1936 under Bernie Bierman, and under Bierman, they won 2 more in 1940 and 1941. And their most recent is in 1960 and their most recent championship is in 1960 under Murray Wormuth. But in terms of longevity, obviously not much to show for their program since that 1960 national championship. And in terms of historical dominance, they are 34th in all-time wins with 749, 573 winning percentage. 4th note team of the video goes to Minnesota. It's good to acknowledge a team like Minnesota though, just because they do have a very, very solid program history. Don't want to discount them on the fact that they haven't been very good in this century. But with that, they are, of course, a nope team on this list. And next, it is the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Well, oh well, one of the most contentious programs in this list, most likely due to their recent history not being quite up to par with their historical dominance over the prior century. In their history, 5 national championships, 2 under Bob Devaney in 1970 and 1971, and then 3 in the 1990s under Tom Osborne, 1994, 1995, 1997. And in terms of longevity, apart from like the last 15 years, they are arguably a top 5 team historically. Very good pre-1960s, elite runs in the 60s and 70s, another elite run in the 90s to early 2000s. And since then, we know how the story goes. Don't need to go over that here. Historical dominance, though, they are 9th all-time in wins with 931, 676 winning percentage. And for Nebraska, I am going to have to go blue blood status. Of course, they are carried by their pre-2015 history. And in my opinion, it would take probably another like 20 years of them being as mediocre as they have been for them to get knocked down any further on this list. And next, it is Notre Dame, yet another powerhouse brand on this list, but let's see their history before we jump to conclusions. In terms of championship history for Notre Dame, they have 9, which is a very good start. 4 in the 1940s, 1943, 1946, 1947, 1949 under Frank Leahy, then under Ara Parseghian, 1964, 1966, 1973, then 1 in 1977 under Dan Devine, and 1 in 1988 under the legendary Lou Holtz. Shout out to the Holtz family. Hope you are all doing well. And in terms of longevity, they have 3 national titles pre-poll era. The coaches I just talked about cover most of the 1900s, and they have seen some surprising lows since 2000, but still very, very good. A few elite stretches under Brian Kelly and now Marcus Freeman. And in terms of historical dominance, it is pretty straightforward. 4th all-time in wins with 972, approaching that 1,000 win territory. 733 all-time winning percentage. Notre Dame, another blue blood team. And next, it is Ohio State, and we just talked about powerhouse brands. Here is another one, and they're generally accepted as a blue blood, but let's go ahead and take a look, see if we can find anything that most people overlook. For their national championship history, they have 9, 1 in 1942 under Paul Brown, 5 under the legendary Woody Hayes, 1954, 1957, 1961, 1968, 1970, 1 in 2002 under Jim Tressel, 1 in 2014 under Urban Meyer, 1 in 2024 under Ryan Day. And now, please allow me to collect my breath. And as for their longevity, as we just saw, very, very good from the 40s to 70s to say the least. Took a bit of a hiatus in the 80s and 90s, but since 2000 have won 3 national titles on top of those. For historical dominance, they are second just behind rival Michigan with 990 all time. Probably going to get to that 1,000 win range next season. 737 winning percentage all time, which is actually higher than Michigan. So Ohio State fans, you have that to hang your hat on. And wouldn't you know it, Ohio State is our 5th blue blood team of this video. And next, it is the Oklahoma Sooners, now a member of the SEC, but previously members of the Big 12, the Big 8, the Big 7, the Big 6, and the Southwestern Conference in their history. For national championships, they have 7 all-time, 3 in the 1950s under Bud Wilkinson, 3 in 1974, 1975, and 1985 under Barry Switzer, and 1 in 2000 under Bob Stoops. For their program longevity, they have been championship caliber since 1940. Before that wasn't really special, but if you think about it, that's only a few years into the AP poll era, so not a lot of blame cast there. They're another team who took a dive a little bit in the 90s, but they have been very good in the 2000s under Bob Stoops, Lincoln Riley, and now Brent Venables. They are 6th all-time in wins with 960, 733 winning percentage all-time. Oklahoma, in my opinion, another blue blood team, and apparently a good chunk of the blue blood teams just so happen to fall on the M to O range in the alphabet, which I guess I'm just now realizing looking at this list. But let us continue with the Oregon Ducks, a very, very interesting case here, mainly because they have 0 national championships in their history, which is obviously going to be a big knock on this list. I'm pretty sure they're the only team on this list without one, now that I'm thinking about it. And in terms of longevity, not a ton for the Oregon Ducks pre-2000 really. but since then they have been elite of the elite most of the time. Just 2 losing seasons this century, multiple title appearances. They are just 45th in all-time wins though, with 731 and a 584 all-time winning percentage. And this is really tough since they have no national championships, no historical prowess to go off of. I could see them being a powerhouse team, but since they have been so elite, just not able to take home the big one in this century, I think I have to go new blood for the Oregon Ducks. Might be a bit controversial, but I mean, they have just been so good for the entirety of this century. I feel like it would be disrespectful to put them any lower. And after them, we have the Penn State Nittany Lions, another very tough one, right on the edge of a few different tiers in this list. They have 2 national championships, both under Joe Paterno in 1982 and 1986. They obviously had one of the best runs in football from the mid-60s to early 2010s under Paterno. Before that, they had some solid years under guys like Rip Engel. And obviously after that, very good under James Franklin for a good bit of the 2010s. But not elite in either of those cases before or after Joe Paterno. In terms of dominance, they are 8th all-time in wins with 950, a 689 winning percentage. Again, they are just on the edge of a ton of those teams. But in my opinion, the biggest separation between being a blue blood and a powerhouse here is they just don't have that elite powerhouse experience outside of that stretch under Joe Paterno. Only 2 national championships, none of which are in this century, and in this century they've been very good, not elite in most cases. I wouldn't have a problem with putting them in new blood, but since all of these teams really have won a national championship or been in that conversation since 2000, I am adding Penn State to the powerhouse tier. And another team on this list is the Pittsburgh Panthers, another team not many people think of, but a team that does have championship pedigree in their history. 2 national championships in 1937 and 1976, but longevity is once again the killer here. Not a ton of national success recently. They had solid success at points in the last century, but not a ton really since the mid 80s to 90s range. And in between those stretches, they have had some very low points in their history. 27th all-time in wins with 776, 574 winning percentage. Unfortunately for Pitt, I'm going to have to go with nope here. After them, it is the Tennessee Volunteers, and I'm realizing getting into this, it does not get easier the further we get into this list. Another giant brand for Tennessee, the big orange tee you see everywhere, all across the country, and probably all across the world too. But in terms of championships, this is a hotly contested metric actually. They only have 2 in the AP poll era. Most Tennessee fans would probably say they have 6, but in terms of AP and coaches poll national championships, it is just 2. One in 1951 under Robert Neyland, who once again they named their stadium after, and then one in 1998 under Phil Fulmer. And like a few of these teams, they are a mixed bag in the previous century with multiple elite stretches, but then once again took a nosedive and then really have plateaued since 2000. 9 losing seasons in this century, and come to think of it, really their entire history is a mixed bag. They've had their ups, they've had their downs, they've had their in-betweens. So let's just go on to dominance. 14th all-time in wins, which is very good. 883 all-time, 670 winning percentage. But for Tennessee, I'm going to have to go with powerhouse. Not enough sustained dominance outside of the Neyland and Fulmer eras to justify blue blood status in my opinion, and not enough recent success to justify new blood like I just said for Penn State. And on top of that, not enough national titles for them, unlike an Oklahoma or an Ohio State. So Tennessee is your 3rd powerhouse team of the video. And next it is Texas, another orange tee team. Once again, another elite brand, but as we've seen, that doesn't equate to blue blood status. 4 national championships in their history, 3 under Darrell Royal, once again stadium named after this guy, 1963, 1969, and 1970, and then their national championship in 2005 under Mack Brown. And overall, they've been continuously great for their entire existence, pretty much. Some early points in the early 1900s weren't as good, but I don't really care about that as much when the rest of it is pretty good outside of the mid 80s as well. And some in the 2000s, I don't want to just write that off as well. Obviously, it took a bit of a plunge in the late 2010s. But other than that, most of the time, a very great to elite program, multiple elite stretches throughout their history. They are 6th all-time in wins with 960, 723 winning percentage, and in my opinion, they just check every single box. Multiple elite runs, historically dominant, multi-time champion, Texas is the 7th blue blood team of the video. And next it is Texas A&M. Now we've heard about how good they can be for a while now, and they might be here now. They made the playoffs this year, looking pretty good under Mike Elko, but cannot say the same historically. But let's go ahead and give them a chance here. In terms of national championships, they have just one in 1939. They spent a long time throughout their history as a sleeping giant due to the kind of money, the kind of resources they have to offer. But they're pretty average from the 50s and 70s. Had their ups and downs since 1980, but nothing really sustained for the Aggies since then. They are 23rd all-time in wins with 797. Will most likely join the 800 club next year. 605 winning percentage all-time. Just not enough there recently for new blood. Obviously not enough historically for blue blood. But have been very good. Some very good stretches in their history. Just not enough for either of those tiers, like I said. After them, we have the USC Trojans. Another giant brand. Possibly the biggest brand on the west side of the country. They have 7 national championships in their history. One in 1939 under Howard Jones. 4 under John McKay in 62, 67, 72, 74. One in 1978 under John Robinson. And 2 under Pete Carroll back-to-back in 2003 and 2004. And if those championships didn't tell the story, they have had multiple elite stretches throughout their history. They had a few good stretches pre-1960, multiple elite ones through the 1970s to early 2000s. They are 12th all-time in wins with 891, could also join the 900 club soon. 694 winning percentage all-time. And while they have had their down stretches throughout their history, as many of these teams have, their championship caliber dominance is enough for me to have them as our 8th blue blood team. And winding it down with our last team, we have the Washington Huskies. They have had solid success recently, obviously made the national title game in 2023, and they have had enough historical success to obviously warrant them a spot in this conversation. 1 championship all time in 1991, so pretty recent under Don James. Only a few really good stretches pre-1980 though, and after those 1990s runs, like I just said, some great to elite runs in that time frame. They are 25th all time in wins with 790, yet another one who could join the 800 club soon. 619 winning percentage. They have been fairly good to great historically, pretty good recently, not elite by any stretch of the imagination for most of this century. So I am going powerhouse. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. We have decided who the blue blood teams in college football are. I have Alabama, Michigan, Nebraska, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Texas, and USC as our 8 blue blood programs. After them, new bloods Clemson, Florida, Florida State, Georgia, LSU, Miami, and Oregon. Our powerhouses are Auburn, Penn State, Tennessee, Texas A&M, and Washington. And our nope teams are Army, Georgia Tech, Michigan State, Minnesota, and Pitt. Let me know what you think of this list down below. What would you change from it? Is Penn State a blue blood? That's probably going to be the most contested one of the video. Is Tennessee up here somewhere? Go ahead and drop that comment and drop a like and subscribe if you did enjoy it. It helps me out a lot, and I will see you in the next video.